So I first met Dr. Brian Gerrard as an article in an academic publication. He was writing on school-based family counseling. I was a beginning MFT student in the San Francisco Unified School District, having segued from being a literacy person to mental health. And I was trying to convince the district to fund a school-based mental health program at 3 schools. It was really a beautifully done proposal. I included Brian as a reference, and I also quoted from the Child Study Unit at Yale. And true to the district's form, they did not fund it. However, things developed, and in a sense, not that my life could ever be parallel to Brian's, but we never did get to meet until very recently, within about the last 6 years, when I came on board as the executive director for the center. Let me tell you a little bit about Brian. There is just a list of accomplishments, and you can go on the Disaster Shock website to read all about him. You can go on the Wiser website to read all about him. But I like to talk about him from my experience getting to know him. This is one funny guy. He can make me laugh in the midst of tears. One aspect of him that you should know is that he doesn't speak American English. So really, American English is his second language. Brian is Canadian, and you will hear that patois, actually not the patois, but the flavor of Canadian British English coming through. Brian founded the center. He opens doors for psychological healing wherever he goes. I've been the recipient of his open door policy. And I encourage you actually to start to get to know him on paper, because there are many ways in which you too can connect with a man for all seasons, an incredibly astute academic, and a guy who can really get down and dirty. That's Brian Gerrard. Brian's going to present today, and we'll let him take the show.
Merci beaucoup, Internet, for that fine introduction. And I'm glad it was recorded because it's one of the nicest ones I've ever had. So, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming here for my presentation. I am particularly impressed and delighted to see so many males here, because, you know, 35 years ago when I began as the MFT coordinator at the University of San Francisco, about 1/3 to 1/2 of our students were males. And in the last 30 years, if you find even one male in your class, that's amazing. So this, I don't know quite how this happened here, but I think this is great. So Tony, have you made me co-host so I can show my slides?
Yes.
Very good. You know, it says host disabled, participant screen sharing.
I saw that.
Yeah, I'm not able to share my slides yet.
I know, I'm going to do it. Sheena, I think you need to turn it over to him. Oh, you're the host now, Brian.
Okay, very good. Okay, this is the title of my presentation, school-based family counseling, an overview. This is a basic overview of the field of school-based family counseling. You do not need to take any notes because I have sent to Tony to send to you a copy of all these slides. And I've also sent you a copy of the book, School-Based Family Counseling, Transforming Family School Relationships. And so you will have both of those as a resource to use. I'd like you to save your questions to the end because I'm an introvert and I can't handle interruptions very effectively. So here's a definition of school-based family counseling. It's basically an integrated approach to counseling, to mental health intervention that focuses on both school and on family, those two pieces, school and family, in order to help children overcome personal problems and succeed at school and to succeed at life, really. And this is a little diagram that we use to indicate the importance of school and family, which are really, in young children, are the two most important social institutions that affect them. As they get older, peer group becomes an important third source of socialization. So school-based family counseling is a meta model. The term meta is from the Greek meaning beyond. And so a meta model is an overarching model that can be used to conceptualize how we work with schools and families. And one of the advantages of being a meta model is that whether you have humanistic or behavioral or whatever your theoretical orientation to therapy is, you can use that orientation using this meta model to help you think about school and family intervention. So the focus is on mental health interventions in schools and with families. How do we link these together in order to promote school as well as personal success? So the term school-based refers to an emphasis on school success. It's not meant to refer to the site of the intervention, because you can do school-based family counseling from a private practice community perspective, as well as from working directly in the school. You're going to be working directly in the school, but you don't have to do it that way just to do school-based family counseling. And school-based family counseling incorporates all the various techniques from counseling therapy, psychotherapy, psychoeducational interventions, which teachers can use across all the mental health disciplines. So it's basically an interdisciplinary approach, which is important to know about. The professionals who typically carry out school-based family counseling represent all the mental health professions, including teachers. And we'll talk about teachers in a moment. Teachers are very important, particularly in countries and cities where there are no mental health professionals. As you look at overall on the planet how things are in terms of mental health, there are a lot of countries that haven't developed mental health very thoroughly in terms of training. So this is a picture of Alfred Adler. He was a psychiatrist who began his work as a Freudian, working with Freud and Jung back in the early start of the century, early 20s. And he deserves to be thought of as the first school-based family counselor. He was an Austrian psychiatrist. He founded what was called the individual psychology approach, which is still widely used and is a strength-based approach to working with children, schools, and families. And what he did that was remarkable, in Vienna, he developed 28 guidance clinics throughout Vienna in the 1920s. And each of these was attached to the school. And what he would do is, at the guidance clinic, he would hold a meeting of parents and teachers, and on stage, he would have a teacher describe a problem with a student, and then he would interview the parent about the problem, which might be the same at home, not cooperating with adults. And then he would describe an intervention that could be done. So he worked very closely with schools and families. And this little quote from him, that psychology and education are two phases of the same reality and the same problem, reveals his view of the close connection between school and family. These two books were written in the really back in the 1970s, and they've been updated for more recent years. Were written by Rudolf Dreikurs, who was an Adlerian, who came to the United States after the World War II started, and that war put an end, by the way, to all the guidance clinics that Adler had developed. But when Dreikurs came to the United States, he established Adlerian therapy, working with children and families and schools, as a very basic approach that was widely used in the 60s and 70s. And these two books, one dealing with parents and one dealing with teachers, illustrate the school-based family counseling approach. So in traditional school mental health intervention, and here we are talking about school counselors, school psychologists, school social workers, those professions that have the word school written into their discipline, they tend to focus on academic counseling, guidance groups, individual counseling and therapy, and teacher consultation. And if you talk to any school counselors about what they actually end up doing, for many years, it was mainly academic counseling, and they had difficulty focusing on these other three more counseling therapy related functions. But these are the main functions for traditional school mental health professionals. Traditional family mental health professionals, this is what we do. This is our approach: conjoint family counseling therapy, working with couples, counseling and therapy, parent consultation. We also do what I call family therapy with individuals. It's harder to do, it's not impossible to do, but if you use a family systems approach, where you're constantly thinking about the broader system a client is connected to, you can do family systems therapy that way. So here are some common school problems: learning disorder, poor grades, problems with peers, conflict with teacher, school refusal. And here are some common family problems that family therapists are very familiar with: divorce, marital conflict, scapegoating, child abuse, spouse abuse, economic stress, sibling rivalry, discrimination in the community that affects the family and that affects the children. Discrimination also can occur as a school problem. What's important here is that the problems that a child is having at school and the problems that a child is experiencing in the family, they feed into each other, and so can contribute to much more serious difficulties. So the thing about families that's important to think about is that in traditional individual psychotherapy, not a family systems approach, the family was generally viewed as a nuisance. Get them out of the way, they're probably causing a problem, let's just work with the child. But families have resources: parenting, grandparent wisdom, family support, sibling role models, monitoring homework, and collaboration with teachers. And so what we try to do in school-based family counseling is to mobilize the family resources and also the school resources. I don't have a slide on that right now, but I could certainly add one. So when we look at the school mental health programs and family mental health programs, there are some competencies and skills that are common to both. Here they are: doing child counseling or therapy, being an advocate for the child, group counseling, doing child assessment, parent consultation, awareness of ethical issues, referral to community resources, program evaluation, multicultural counseling and therapy, community intervention. These counseling competencies listed in the right in white, you will find these in school programs and in family programs. In school mental health programs, we also will find some things that you won't find in family therapy programs. Teacher consultation, career counseling, doing a guidance group with a class, how to hold a classroom meeting, school law, and academic planning. Similarly, in family mental health programs, these are elements that will not be taught in a school counseling program. And the implication of this is that when you put family counselors into a school, when I'm talking about you folks, you need to know about school culture and the school side of school-based family counseling. When school counselors want to do school-based family counseling, they have to learn how to do family counseling. Unless you have a program, a master's program in school-based family counseling, and they exist. There's not very many. There's probably only 5 in the United States, and one of them is California State University, Los Angeles, which is a master's program in school-based family counseling. So school-based family counseling is meant to integrate these family counseling and school counseling skills. And one of the challenges for you when you go out to the school is you've got to be able to draw on all of these skills at some point, and you won't have them all yet. You're early in your program, you haven't finished your MFT programs in some of the courses you may not have taken yet. And it's not uncommon we have students go out and they haven't had conjoined family therapy yet. So, you know, the thought of doing an interview with an entire family can be quite intimidating. So one of the most important things we want you to learn is how to do a school-based family counseling case conceptualization. A case conceptualization is your assessment of the family dynamics and all of the positive and negative elements in the family and the systems around the family. And if you don't know about that, you're going to go and not do a very good job. You'll rush in and maybe work on the wrong thing. So the school-based family counseling meta model is meant to help you conceptualize the focus on schools, the focus on families, the prevention focus, and what I call the intervention or the remedial focus. So this diagram produces 4 quadrants, one that focuses on school prevention, one on family prevention, one on school intervention, and one on family intervention. My assumption about you as trainees in the center is that you know a fair bit now about family intervention, but probably the other elements are still missing for you. In family therapy, students typically learn family prevention last in the program rather than early, although that may be an exception for some of you. So school prevention involves doing guidance group with the entire class. You go into the teacher's class and you do it with the teacher, or you teach the teacher how to do it, or typically you would do it. Classroom management, which has to do with classroom discipline. Teachers get very little training in that, so they often need help. And if you walk into a classroom and it's chaotic in the room, that's a teacher that hasn't learned how to do classroom management and holding classroom meetings around special issues like maybe bullying that is occurring in that class. Also, student support groups when there's been a death or a shooting in a school, and stress management techniques. In school intervention, these are the typical approaches: individual counseling, teacher consultation, crisis intervention. In family prevention, we have parent education, parent support groups, and I hope you will learn how to do parent education training in your MFT programs. In family intervention, we have the typical triad of family counseling, parent consultation, couples counseling. In school-based family counseling, we don't use the term family therapy. We use family counseling because it's more acceptable to come into schools. There are some principals and school superintendents who think that therapy should not be done in the school. So they're more acceptable when we use the term counseling. But in my head, counseling, therapy, they're synonymous. So all the different mental health professions then are able to come and use this meta model. That's why it's designed. So I'm going to show you a case study now, a hypothetical case study involving a student we will call Louise, age 10, Barbara, who is a school-based family counseling professional, Miss Jones, who will be the teacher, will have Mark, who will be the bully, Mr. Allant will be the principal, Mrs. Rodriguez, Mr. Rodriguez, Louise's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Mark's grandfather and grandmother. And in doing a school-based family counseling assessment, we would want to collect information on all these relationships. And this case would probably come to you in that a teacher or the principal might prefer it, a parent might prefer it, sometimes the child will self-refer, and it's around Louise being bullied by Mark at school. So this is a hypothetical assessment. Conflict between Louise and Mark. Louise has an underdeveloped relationship with his father. So there's a lack of contact, a lot of emotional warmth, not much going on in that relationship. Tension between Mrs. and Mr. Rodriguez. So they're having some marital problems. Mark is in conflict with his grandparents. I'm not sure where the parents are. I didn't sort of include that piece in the study, but it'd be important to know. Louise, no strong connection with his teacher. Teacher is unaware that bullying is going on. Mark has a positive relationship with several other students in the class, and student bystanders it's very important that you understand the principle of student bystanders in bullying, because student bystanders often give tacit support to the bully to behave in a bullying way. And so interventions often have to be made at that level in order to prevent further bullying. The principal, we're not sure about. Principal may be completely unaware of what is happening going on in this classroom. So this is how one way I would conceptualize doing a school-based family counseling, case conceptualization to work with this problem that would come to me apparently as a problem with one student. So with Luis, I would definitely want to do some individual counseling with him, help him process his feelings around being bullied, maybe do some stress reduction training and maybe some assertion training with him around that. And with Mark, I would want to do some individual counseling as well. Often bullies have themselves been bullied, and they are engaging in what Eric Byrne, the founder of transactional analysis, called the hot potato game, where somebody treats you badly and you pass on the bad feeling to somebody else. I would also want to have consultation with Miss Jones. Is she aware that bullying is going on in her classroom? Is she motivated to do something about it? Which I would hope so. And this teacher possibly needs some help with classroom management. So you need to know a little bit how you can help a teacher with that. And Draker's book, by the way, tells you how to do that. With the Rodriguez family, I would want to do family counseling. I'd want to bring them in and have a conjoint family counseling session. And when you work in a school-based family counseling way, you don't call the family and say, you know, your child is being bullied at school, and we think there's maybe family problems at home, and we think you need therapy. Would you come and see me so we can do some family therapy? They're not going to show up. But if you call them and say, you know, your son is having some struggles at school, we'd like to help him do better. You are experts on your son. Would you be willing to come in and help me understand your son better so we can help him do better at school. That's a completely different approach. It's a dramatically different approach. It's the school-based family counseling approach is why we are effective with these kinds of problems. You would want to do parent consultation, and you might want to do some couples counseling if they're open to it, or you might refer them out, but you could certainly well do it in the school context. So with the Smith family, you would definitely want to involve them in family counseling. And with the principal, you would want to do some principal consultation, particularly if you want to do school prevention and family prevention, where you want to do something with the entire school. So if Miss Jones' class, you would do classroom meetings around bullying. With the entire school, you might do a guidance group around the topic of bullying. And with the school parents, you might have a parent education meeting with all the parents, and you might hold parent support groups with parents who needed extra support for problems they were having with their children or relating to the school. So, this is how I would initially conceptualize a problem like this. I would think about it in terms of the 4 quadrants here, not just in terms of one quadrant. So the model requires that you step outside of your training that you have, whether it's in social work, psychiatry, psychology, or MFT, to look at it in a broader systems way. So this is a family systems friendly approach because of the systems look. How might I schedule the interventions? I would probably start with school intervention, then go to family intervention, then go to school prevention, then go to family prevention. But depending on what information I gathered, I might do something different. But this is just to give you an idea of how the model helps you to be flexible. In 2008, when I first developed this model, I didn't have community in it. We added community in 2017 because there are situations where community resources are needed because the school may not have the resources. So you might facilitate an after-school program with an agency. And we in the center did this about 30 years ago. It was called the Potrero Hill Tennis Tutoring Program. And this program was at a particular school, or I think it was at several schools, and students would come after school. They would get tutoring in subjects they were struggling with, and they would also go and play tennis afterwards. And these were students that we were also seeing in the school with our school-based family counseling trainees. You might arrange a visit from a community crisis intervention team if there's been a death in the school, or there's been a school shooting or something really traumatic like that. And, you know, not every trainee or every graduate of a family therapy program knows how to do grief work. It's difficult to do, it's very rewarding, but sometimes you need extra skills. You could get that from a community resource. You might arrange for the local public library to host a film on parenting. For the parents could go and see that. Or you might arrange respite care for a single mother dealing with an ill parent. So these are just examples to give you the idea of how community can be a valuable resource. So community involvement has 2 primary goals: mobilizing resources for children's schools and families, and protecting children's schools and families from harm. And so as family therapists, you're comfortable with seeing not just the child, but the family, but you also need to be comfortable with working with the principal and the teachers, and also maybe working with people in the community, other resources. So this requires a fair degree of extroversion from you, but as family therapists, you have the aptitude to do that. There are different types of school-based family counseling delivery program. The first type is what are called school-sited programs. The term sited refers to the physical location of the program. So programs where school mental health professionals like school counselors, school social workers, school psychologists, but they don't know how to do family counseling, they get in-service training in how to do the family work. And that way, they're able to deliver a school-based family counseling program. Or you could hire school family counseling staff directly to the school. A lot of our trainees in the center have been hired by schools afterwards. Or you might have a university school collaborative. That's what we are in the Center for Child and Family Development. Or you might have an agency school collaborative where an agency will send family counselors in the agency out to the school to do work there. Those are the school-sided programs. And you can also have a private practice school collaborative where a family therapist in private practice will go and connect with the schools and deliver services at the school and at their practice. Community-sided programs occur in the community, and all the counseling is done at the community site with minimal visits to the school. All of these programs are effective ways of delivering school-based family counseling. So, what are the strengths of school-based family counseling? Number one, the systems focus. If you had Bowen theory, so far you know that the nuclear family emotion system that Bowen talks about how one part of the system affects the entire system. And Bowen used the term identified patient, which is what we have here in red, but the identified patient is affected by the network of relationships in the rest of the family. And you need to figure those out. So it's always a bit of a detective's job to do that. So SBFC is a systems approach, and that refers to all these different systems, including the peer system. And as children get older, particularly as they move into middle and high school, you have to conceptualize, in your case conceptualization, the role of the peer group. The second strength of school-based family counseling is that it is strength-based. And rather than having a pathology focus, it has an educational focus. So our approach is to emphasize doing well at school, emphasize school success, but we do not abandon our therapy role. Partnership with parents. This is a very important component of school-based family counseling, is that we relate to parents as kind of co-helpers with us, co-professionals in helping children succeed. And the research on parent involvement in school success is voluminous. There's just no question that if parents can be engaged in helping their children to do well at school and go to school and to learn, the outcomes are very, very positive. There's just, there must be close to 100 studies on this. School-based family counseling is also a multiculturally sensitive approach. Traditional psychotherapy has more of a pathology focus, as exemplified by the use of the DSM. The DSM, maybe I could come back and I have a separate presentation I do in that. The problem with the DSM is that it is not a reliable assessment approach, which means therefore it's not a valid approach. And there's many ways and problems with that approach. We use an educational focus that's disarming to families and parents. It makes them want to more engage with us. Traditional psychotherapy has an individual focus, whereas we have a family focus. Family is often seen as interfering in traditional psychotherapy. We see the family as resources. And therapy is only done at the clinic in traditional psychotherapy. Here we do consultation at school. And we had a former trainee in the center many years ago. She used to use rap. She would work with a student during recess, playing basketball with him and using rap as her intervention. Child advocacy role, this is very important. Our client in school-based family counseling is the child, the family, and the school, all three, but they're in a hierarchy, and the most important advocacy role is protecting children. School-based family counseling also emphasizes not just changing families when families are dysfunctional, but changing schools. This is harder to do, but it's part of the school-based family counselor's role. There are school systems that are authoritarian and contribute seriously to problems, which is why school bullying can be very rife in many schools. And you know, the research on shootings at schools, school shootings in the United States are something like a pandemic. And the schools where these shootings tend to occur have certain qualities that stand out. And one of those qualities is a lack of cohesion in the school. So promoting school cohesion is an important thing that school-based family counselors can do. The seventh strength is that the school-based family counseling is an interdisciplinary approach, can be used by any of the mental health approaches. And the eighth strength is that it's evidence-based. And what the literature shows is broad support for school-based family counseling across different mental health disciplines. The strongest support is in the school mental health literature. And there is moderate evidence-based support for school-based family counseling. The term evidence-based is typically used to mean there's been randomized control group studies that compare one approach with another approach to see which approach is more effective. And there are 8 studies, and you will have these on the slides that Tony will send you. There are 8 studies that have been conducted in the last 20 years comparing what happens if you do a school approach compared with the school and family approach, or a family approach compared with a school and family integrated approach. All of the studies show when you combine the two together, you get more powerful effects. So what is important here, and I would like to encourage you to think about, is that you not do what I call parent replacement therapy. Parent replacement therapy is where you work only with the child, make no effort to work with the parents, or for maybe the school for that matter, and just do child therapy. And it's very tempting when you go out to just work with the child. First of all, it's one-on-one, so you feel like you can handle it. You bring in the parents, who knows what's going to go on, particularly if one of them looks like one of your parents. Or maybe you're not used to working with a group. I avoided doing group counseling for 20 years. I'm a very strongly introverted person. I would much rather work with one person, or if it's a family, a small family. And I found after doing family therapy for 20 years, and I was plunged in a situation of doing group counseling with cancer patients, I was actually very good at it. I'd become desensitized to it. So it's normal to feel reluctant, particularly if you're a more introverted therapist, to not want to work with the whole family, but that's not good therapy. You become the good parent, and the parent that needs to learn to have better skills, more empathy skills perhaps, or more disciplinary skills in relating to the child, they don't develop the skills because you don't work with them. Here are some resources if you want to learn more about school-based family counseling. This is a Wikipedia site you can go to. You can go to the International Journal for School-Based Family Counseling, and there's a link on the slides I sent you. And these are some books on school-based family counseling. This one here, School-Based Family Counseling, Transforming Family-School Relationships. I was the senior editor for that. This book was developed in 2013, and I have sent a copy to Tony to send to you. It's got a lot in it, 900 pages, everything from soup to nuts on how to do school-based family counseling. This is a more recent book, 2019, School-Based Family Counseling, an Interdisciplinary Practitioner's Guide. It's available from Routledge Press. And this book, School-Based Family Counseling with Refugees and Immigrants, this book came out 2 months ago. And a lot of you are going to be working with immigrants. And so, but you will find something on working with immigrants in all three of these books. There are other books on this slide that are available. This describes the behavioral approach to school-based family counseling. And these are other books here that have been around. Some have been around for a while, but they're all very good. And here's a reference list here. We developed something called the Oxford Symposium in School-Based Family Counseling. This is a yearly conference in school-based family counseling held at Oxford University and other locations like the University of Hong Kong and the University of Venice. It's also an international association of more than 130 scholars and practitioners around the world who are interested in school-based family counseling. We'll be meeting at Oxford next year. We had a webinar 3 weeks ago. Victoria, who is present here, did a fine presentation on that. And we also have a disaster shock website, which is a school-based family counseling website where the book that I mentioned earlier can be found. And that website is here. And on this website, we maintain a disaster watch list of all the places where we feel disasters are occurring. And we send out emails with our materials attached to that. We have the Family Disaster Shock book. We also have a book for teachers that's been translated in different languages for teachers and parents. And that pretty much summarizes my presentation as an overview. So, any questions?
Sheila?
First of all, thank you so much, Brian. This was super interesting and really helpful and so well presented. You managed to synthesize everything in a really comprehensive, holistic way that makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot is going to stick. So thank you. I have so I'm like a hammer looking for nails, and my special bunch of nails is parental alienation. And I was wondering, and the schools have a very, very important role to play in identifying parental alienation and distinguishing it from other forms of child abuse. And I was wondering how, if you had any wisdom on that as a corollary to your presentation.
I do. One of our Oxford Symposium members, Zipporah Shechtman, professor at the University of Haifa, has developed a parent support group program called Intimate Parenting, which is a program for helping parents to relate in a more caring and empathic way to their children. And I will send you a link to she calls herself Zippy, to Zippy's program. She just wrote a chapter in, there's a new book in school-based family counseling coming out probably in 2 months, called School-Based Family Counseling for Crisis and Disaster, Global Perspectives. And she has a chapter in it on how to develop intimate parenting. And if you send me your email after the meeting, don't send it in chat because I'll never find it. I'll send you a copy of the chapter, and I'll send it to Tony as well, so anybody else who wants to have a look at it can. And it gives an overview of that approach, which is a very gentle way of working with parents who have alienation with their kids and how to overcome that.
Thank you so much.
Alter.
Yes, thank you, Brian. Definitely steeped me in everything. It felt really comfortable hearing everything you have to say and looking backwards on at least my half year in the program, how it all comes together, whether we like it or not. There's an entire family system behind every kid, or some kind of system that's begging in some ways, whether they're audibly or not. they're gonna they pique interest because they're involved. What about parentification, where we've got do we have anything in there? I know I'm going to come back to one of my mamas who just can't seem to even stay away from the school. Yeah, it's really fascinating. So I'm wondering what you got there, because it's just this, you know, there's probably more of them out there, but I happen to have one client that mama literally would find me on campus. She just happened to pop up all the time. Yeah, it was really fast. And she just grabbed me. Can I talk with you for a second? And it's really interesting.
Okay, yeah. You're talking about the type of parent that I think is called a tiger parent or a helicopter parent. And wow, what an opportunity. You don't need to invite them to come to school. They come right to you. So I would say how you, well, number one, make friends with this person, and then you need to help them make maybe a paradigm shift, and you need to connect the helicopter parenting with how that's a problem for the child. Is it a problem for the child? And so, you know, in some family systems, being enmeshed is culturally appropriate. And when you try to do individuation, which is a very Western approach, that family may not come back to see you. So you've got to think about that as well. So I'd be very interested in what everybody in that family thinks about this. Maybe they are all happy with it, including the child. And so, but if you feel that it's related to the child having difficulty and symptoms of some sort, for example, an older child might be embarrassed and not want mother to be there at school all the time. And so how do you raise that? So at some point, whatever you do, whether you're working with parental alienation or the opposite, you know, too much enmeshment, you've got to make friends. You've got to make friends kind of the way Mnuchin talks about it, where you become like a distant uncle or aunt. You're part of the family, but you're kind of out there on the periphery. So you have a right to say something, but you're not going to get enmeshed with them. Developing that, which I call stage one. Stage one of therapy is developing rapport with the family. Stage two is getting to look at things differently. Stage three is getting to change and do something differently. You've got to do stage one. And if you can't do stage one, forget about stage two, stage three. Ain't going to happen. You will probably won't see the client again. You've got to do stage one and make friends, and you've got to find some way to connect with the client, with the teachers, with the principal, with the parents. You have to connect somehow. And that ability to connect is not an easy one. And so when I'm working with a family the first time, there'll be different family members I can relate to. If somebody in the family is a feeling type, I can connect with them instantly. If they're a thinking type, like my wife, who I love, it's a little bit harder. We're attracted to opposites sometimes, but that calls for relating in a different kind of way. So when I'm talking to a parent who talks about feelings, this is great. I can relate to that. But when I talk about it with another parent who only talks about goals and doesn't talk about how they feel or how their child feels, that's more of a challenge. I have to use a different language to make friends with them. So anyways, I'm starting to ramble off here, but great question.
Thank you. I appreciate you elaborating on it. And yeah, thank you.
Maybe one more.
I'll go quickly, although the question might be a big one. It's another challenging question within the work that we do is childhood sexual abuse, which happens very frequently before the age of 12. So grades, let's say 4, 5, 6 would be the ones where it happens before a child is able to actually go by themselves without parental consent to see a school-based therapist. And also the child may not be forthcoming with the information. Most of the times they're not. What do you have on that, kind of having protective conversations beyond these other private parts? The kind of usual programming that happens is just teaching kids about their private parts. But when you sense from a child's behavior around that age, 10, 11, 12, that there may be something going on that's highly dysregulating, how would you approach it?
Well, that's not a 5-minute answer. That is a 2-hour workshop followed by another 2-hour workshop. Yes, you are going to, in your work, encounter situations where there has been sexual abuse or physical abuse, and where the sexual or physical abuse is still continuing. These you have to report, and if you discover that to be the case, legally you have to do that. The key is it goes back to stage 1. You need to make friends with the parents. And there is one school of thought that is very important to work with the parent who's the abuser as well. Otherwise, you haven't really repaired that problem in the family. So to be somebody who files a abuse report on a parent and also wants to work with the parent to promote healing, this requires extraordinary skill on the part of the therapist. You have to make friends and build trust to the point that you can also indicate that you have to be a guardian. Child advocacy is a critical part of your role. And so when you have your very first meeting with the family, you need to explain that you're not a licensed therapist and that you are a trainee and that you're in supervision, and you discuss your cases with the group and your individual supervisor, and you have to report child abuse. You don't leave that out and say, oh, by the way, I'm very glad you came for our first session, but I'm going to have to turn you into Child Protective Services. And, oh boy, they're going to hang you up by your thumbs for what you did. You can't do that. That's not bad therapy. So if you develop that rapport and that trust, that's the heart of it. You can do all kinds of fancy interventions if the family trusts you, and you're not going to go anywhere in a situation like that. And, it's an advanced skill. It's like flying an airplane, you fly in something with a propeller, and then you may be flying in a jet. Then you practice, when the engines are turned off and the plane is spinning around a dive, you practice pulling out of that. That's where that skill is. Okay, I'm going to stop now because I know that Tony has other things to do with you. I would like to say I enjoyed, I'm really glad that the rest of you were willing to go and do the personal sharing. I felt a connection with all of you. Our meetings on disaster shock, which is a group that meets on Saturdays once a month. If you're interested in learning about our crisis, a disaster support program, we have 2 Ukrainians who are our members who joined us in the last month. And they're part of a program called Ed Camp Ukraine, which is a program that empowers teachers and helps teachers develop social emotional learning programs for their students, and also works with parents. So it's a school-based family counseling program. And we gave them an award at our symposium 3 weeks ago. And they, so anyways, we're working with these folks now. And if any of you wanted to join us, I'll send the link to Tony to share with you. So thank you all. I'm going to sign off now and enjoy the rest of your meeting.